It's the Funny Comics Fan Club.
Hello and welcome to the Funny Comics Fan Club. I am Dr. Mark Hibbett.
So you keep saying.
So I keep saying this year and every year.
I'm nowhere near a doctor. I'm merely ordinary, old-fashioned John Dredge.
John, I must correct you. You are quite near a doctor.
I'm quite near a doctor. You're right. I hadn't thought that through.
I'm only over here. It's fine.
We're going to get straight into the hoo-ha.
It's a bit late.
I've been listening to like a lot of podcasts recently, and they always take like half an hour to get to the point. So I don't want ours to be like that.
No, we don't want to be
straight to the point. By the way, how was your week? Let's get straight to the
point. What are we looking at then, John?
Cheeky Weekly. That's what we're looking at. 8 pence.
8 pence. And the 26th of August, 1978.
Every single Monday.
And did you buy this every single Monday?
Yeah. I pretty much bought, I would say, 3/4 of the whole run.
Crumbs.
That was my main comic for, I guess it would have been 2.5 years maybe.
It ran for 2 years. It ran for.
It wouldn't have been 2.5 years.
It wouldn't have been 2.5 years.
1.5 years maybe.
That would be more than maths, yeah.
Cheeky Weekly. What a brilliant... I mean, what could you say? I mean, I can't say enough good things about it already.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, I think the really big deal about Cheeky Weekly, which I've forgotten, because I used to read it as I read it.
Yeah, how often did you read it?
Not all. I didn't get every episode. I mean, this is very much you get really excited if it turned up in a massive pile of old comics on a rainy Wednesday at school sort of comic. One of those ones.
Oh, I see. So I placed a blooming reservation with my news agent.
Goodness me.
Got it every single week, yeah.
With Dredge written in the top right-hand corner.
Absolutely
in pencil,
right, yeah. It was really good. Really enjoyed that.
But I've forgotten that, I mean, it's absolutely unique in British, as far as I'm aware, in British kids comics, this is unique because every week it's one story. It starts on the front page with Cheeky on a Sunday, I believe. And then the whole comic takes you through Cheeky's week. It's called Cheeky Weekly, and it's about Cheeky's week. It's amazing. Every story is linked. Every story gets an introduction from Cheeky. I mean, some of those, as we'll see, are not necessarily particularly convincing. But the general idea is, it's what I've never known the like.
I mean, what a brilliant concept for a start. That was the one thing that was sort of lacking for me in some of the comics we've already looked at. Any overarching sort of theme to it. And you could almost take the contents of one comic and put it in another one and it wouldn't matter that much.
Yeah, true, yeah.
Not all of them, but some of them.
I think the Dandy had an underlying theme of grim vengeance and violence, didn't it? That was going through that.
It had that going for it.
Yeah. An Oink comic, I suppose. Oink, we haven't done Oink yet, but Oink has
things like
that.
And obviously, and things like Viz, which, not quite, I mean, it's sort of within our remit. That was a parody of the whole thing, so that sort of linked all those together. But Cheeky Weekly, so this is mainly the brainchild of this guy Frank how do you pronounce the surname?
I'm going to wait and let you do it then.
McDermid,
yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I'm ashamed that I don't know how to pronounce his surname. I'm sure Lou Stringer will know. We'll get him to phone in.
That's a good idea, yeah.
But I mean, to me, he is my favourite illustrator, my favourite cartoonist.
Yeah, he's great, isn't he? I think we've covered him when we did Crazy and when we did he was in Wizard and Chips and a few others. And he was sort of the original artist on the Cheeky strip. And the front page here is drawn by him. And it looks fantastic, doesn't it? It's just a great... And the front page and the back page as well. And on the back page it's pin-up pal Petula. And it's one of the characters called Petula. And she's leading a tiger along. It looks fantastic.
Leading a tiger to the cat show.
Yeah. And
all the competition entries are looking a bit scared.
Looking very scared.
But there's just something really, really well defined about how he draws. I can't really define it myself. It's very vibrant, it's very funny, it's hilarious, it's sort of packed with detail.
Loads of detail.
Just springs off the page at you. One scene never forgotten for me. And but I was looking through this issue, and then I got to about halfway and I suddenly thought, this no longer looks like Frank McDermid. To me, it's clearly somebody else.
It's Mike Lacey.
But he does a very, very good job. I mean, I wasn't aware of that until about halfway through the comic, really.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because, same. I mean, I didn't realise... I thought, crikey, this must have been a lot of work for him. But it's not. He's Mike Lacey. Draws loads of stuff. I mean, he drew Sid Snake and Shiner for Wizard and Chips. He drew Bumpkin Billionaires and loads of stuff like that. And I think his style, he sort of adjusts his style a little bit here. So he's kind of ghosting Frank McDermid. and then a guy called and Barry Appleby draws one page.
Oh, okay.
And Frank Madama does the front and the back.
So I suppose he was having a rest this week.
Well, no, I mean, I think there was an interview with him, wasn't it, where he said he basically was given the run of it and did most of it himself. But I guess there's a lot of work that's gone into this because...
Tons of work. I mean, who wrote it? Did he write it?
I don't know who wrote it.
It's very sort of distinctive. Even the writing is very distinctive. I wonder whether he actually wrote that.
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
But there's so many... I mean, basically what happens is Cheeky walks around town delivering his papers. He bumps into loads of characters.
There must be about 50 characters in this in this one comic.
And what happens is, like, so, for instance, Cheeky meets a farmer. The farmer says, "Thanks for the paper, Cheeky. I wonder if it's got the story of my stolen combine harvester."
Stolen? How?
"It was hijacked, sob."
Ho ho. No, I shouldn't laugh.
And the whole strip is like, it's a succession of these two panels. So there's one panel with a setup, one panel with a punchline. Then he goes on, there's another two panels, then there's another two panels. And it's just all the way through like that. That's a lot. I mean... Basically, this one page here has more jokes than the whole of the Dandy has.
It's absolutely crammed full of it. That's why I think I loved it, because it was just action-packed. You know, just the amount, the relentless assault of jokes. This is why I like things like The Goon Show, because there's just so many jokes in it. As opposed to certain sitcoms I could mention. This thing is just a full-on fun fest.
Yeah.
It's full of stuff. And it's got so many jokes in it, like there are jokes written between the panels. Suddenly, below one of the drawings, you've got, heard the one about the woodpecker? It's boring. A bit later on, why do bees have sticky hair? Because they have honeycombs. But the thing about these jokes is that they're crammed in between the panels.
Yeah, and there's jokes in the background. There's one here where there's a sign that says "Chicks Going Cheap."
Yeah.
There's a running gag behind it where there's like a learner driver. So most of these strips, you see the learner driver driving along and like crashing into things.
Yeah. Just really fun, like really energetic.
Yeah, it's packed. And then there's also there's some odd things, isn't there? So
Yeah. I mean, the creativity of it is amazing. The invention of it struck me. For example, I mean, definitely my favourite character is the knock knock door. That's straight out of the Goon Show or something like that, or Spike Milligan or something. It's a door that turns up in the street when he's walking along, and Cheeky knocks on it and does a knock knock joke, and then the door gets annoyed with him.
Yeah,
this happens every single week.
So basically, what happens at the end of this one is Cheeky's rushing home to watch telly, and what he watches on telly will be another strip. But in the background is his mum and dad, and I know with interest, his mother looks exactly like she did in The Crazy Gang.
Oh yeah,
because we were talking about this because his mum in The Crazy Gang looks like Liz from The Crazy Gang, and I say we were wondering, I was wondering, you were putting up with it, whether that means that Liz from The Crazy Gang is Cheeky's sister. But there she is. Bit of continuity there, John.
Great continuity. Great continuity. I mean, I think this was put together with great care. It wasn't just chucked on the desk one day. It was carefully thought through by this brilliant guy.
But because I mean, one example.
Now it's colour. You've got one page of colour.
On to Monday, and here, because of this, so he meets the lollipop lady, and she refers to the fact that next week he'll be back at school. And you think, so not only has all the effort gone into making all these jokes, but they're aware of the time of year. So so this would be 26th of August. So kids reading this would be going back to school next week, and the strip talks about that. So I
mean, the thing is, this is part of the reason I kept these for a long time, because there was a lot to read. There was a lot going on. And you could reread these things and find something new. Yeah. And that was unusual.
The commitment to the bit. So every page ends with Cheeky saying, oh, here's the next page. Even when it's like, there's a 2-page teacher's teasers pull-out bit in which he says, you'll be back to school next week. But even that gets an introduction from Cheeky. But I want to talk about this bit here. So on Tuesday, there's a section where Cheeky says, Posh Claude looks shifty, but so does his mummykins. She's on the night shift at the pickled onion factory.
I don't get that.
Well, what's happening there is, and Cheeky finds this hilarious, is Posh Claude, who behaves like he's really posh, is having to buy clothes from the jumble sale.
Okay, I understand.
And that's like, you sort of think, what, and we're laughing at that's...
That was the one bit I didn't quite understand, I must admit. I mean, there were a few tiny bits that didn't quite work for me. I did find it a bit odd that on the front cover you've got Farmer Giles, who's in the comic for 3 panels.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
He's on the front cover. And I don't think he was ever seen again. I certainly don't remember him very well. But then you've got this character, straight out of the Goon Show again, a kid called Yicky Boo, he appears in one panel, and all he does is shout "Yicky Boo" and scare you.
Yeah.
That is his character.
Yeah.
But I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's quite astonishing, isn't it? When we get to Thursday, there's a really weird bit. It's like suddenly it's like, whoa! Now this is where we are in time, and the joke is Disco Kid turns up. So pros and cons here. Disco Kid is a black character. You go like, there's an actual black character in this. Well done, everybody. All right, he's called the Disco Kid. So it's pros and cons. But then his joke is, hiya man, which new wave singer will be a big hit with a jungle drummer?
I don't know.
Tom Robinson.
Is that a good joke?
It's not a good joke. No.
It's not. I don't actually like this bit very much.
No.
You keep picking on the bits I don't like out of all these brilliant things.
But I just thought it was interesting that it's like, this is 1978.
Well, he's got a T-shirt on that says Olivia Forever.
Yeah.
Olivia Newton-John. So 78, that was Grease must have been out at that point.
Yes, it would be, wouldn't it? Yeah. But it just feels like this is a comic that's actually from 1978.
Yeah,
and
it does.
Unlike a lot of the DC Thompson stuff where we've read, which is like this is a comic from the 1950s. This feels now, doesn't it?
Well, it's like, I mean, that's why I'm interested in the Skateboard Squad.
Shall we have a look at the Skateboard Squad?
Let's have a look at that, because the Skateboard Squad, so that's like a story within the comic. And it's two kids. I've done some research. They're siblings.
Thank you, John.
And there's a dog as well. So there's the three of them in this Skateboard Squad. But the thing is, like, we don't really remember now, but the skateboard craze had just started in the UK at this point. Do you remember?
I remember very well. I had a skateboard.
We were all obsessed with skateboards in the playground around this time. And so this strip reflects that really well. And in fact, there was a previous episode of Cheeky Weekly that had some sort of pull-out feature about how to ride a skateboard. Is that what you do with them? I don't know.
Well, I was going to say, if I just... For the purpose of the tape, I'm showing John my right palm. Can you see there, that scar? On my right. That's a skateboarding injury right there, that is.
How did you do that?
Well, my dad used to... We did a thing where my dad tied a rope to the back of his Ford Capri. It was 1978. And he pulled us along.
He pulled you along?
Yeah, on skateboards. And then...
Did the creator of Back to the Future see this?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I'd like to think he was passing through Market Deeping at the time. But then obviously my dad went, actually, that's probably a bad idea. I probably shouldn't be doing that. So my brother then... We did it in turns. We got my nan's old bike, and one of us would cycle, and the other would be on the skateboard being towed behind. And I flew off into some gravel and went right and landed on my heart. There we go.
Childhood accidents, I can hear them all day. I remember I fell off my bike, right, around this time. And I suddenly thought, there's something wrong here. Oh yes, I'm unable to breathe. I thought, what is going on here? I'd never experienced anything like this before. I was only 7, I suddenly thought, oh, okay. And I later discovered it's called winding yourself. But that was terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying. So, kids, be careful on your bikes and skateboards.
I had exactly the same. I fell off a swing and winded myself. And you're going, I'm about to die. Yeah. And then you can breathe again. It's like, okay, I'm not dying.
I fell out of a tree. That wasn't fun.
Didn't do you any good, did it? Well, I fell in a pond.
You fell in a pond?
I fell in a pond.
What was that a result of?
Inadequate care by a pond.
It's you couldn't make it up, could you? Back to the Skateboard Squad.
Oh yes, the Skateboard Squad.
Because watch them in action. I mean, that's what it says at the top. So that's what we're doing.
Because I think it's interesting because from a lot of these strips, because it goes straight from Cheeky Comic into it, and it's like it's one story. Most of them don't actually have the little title cards, do they?
No, that's right. So it's meant to be a continuous narrative, which is sort of is, but you can tell someone else is drawing this bit. But it's fun, and there's this little Skateboard Squad. They turn up at Lord Lute's mansion. And their problem is that they've got a very long table which they have meals at, but it takes them ages to get from one end to the other. So the Skateboard Squad go up and down with the salt and biscuits and various bits of food. And then in the end they crash into each other. And one of their skateboards goes flying into the chandelier, which comes down, smashes the table in bits. And then they put one bit next to the other bit and make it a lot shorter, and that's the end of the story.
Sorry. It's another example of this sort of class stuff that goes on in these comics. Because here are some posh people, aren't they, crazy and weird?
Yeah. But there's nothing remotely... They're not looking down their nose at them.
They're not, it's all quite jolly, isn't it?
It's all very friendly and cheery. So, yeah, I always like them. I mean, I remember someone lending me a skateboard. That's as far as I ever got with it. And I tried it for about a minute and fell off. And that was the end of that. Never attempted it again. So I just vicariously read it in these strips. But back to Thursday.
Back to Thursday.
So this is another really cool narrative device. Every week he discovers this thing called a mystery comic.
Yeah.
Somewhere, lying in the street, or I don't know where he discovers it. So he looks at this thing called a mystery comic, and then we get to see one of the strips from it, which this week is Must Have a Million. It's possibly slightly problematic now, this idea. It's a rich Arab kid and sort of helping out his mates with lots of money, essentially.
Oh, there we go again. It's money and, yeah.
It's money, but when you're a kid, loss of money is the stuff of dreams.
Yes, please, yeah.
And I actually thought the strip was great. I don't know.
To any potential sponsors, it still is, and we will accept it.
Yeah. All donations gratefully received.
Do you ever feel thirsty when you're out for a walk or at a football match?
No.
What you need is a Super Sipper, the new tough plastic non-spill drinks carrier.
I don't.
Just pour your favourite drink into it.
No.
Pour your favourite drink into it. Close the straw that comes with it, and you can take it with you anywhere.
Don't want to.
Without spilling.
Sounds rubbish.
It comes in red, blue or green.
Marginally more interesting now. I thought that was useless at the time.
Yeah. When you get to the mystery comic, I think it's quite telling that it's towards the end of Cheeky, because they've gone like, oh, we can't. Oh, we have to think of more links. Oh, do we have to? Let's just say he finds a comic. Oh, thank you. That's
I actually think that's a really good idea, because I think kids really like the idea of having a comic within a comic. I mean, we've seen it on Wizard and Chips.
We have, yeah.
But there was a later edition of this where the whole mystery comic was a cut-out thing.
And was it called The Mystery Comic?
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
So I would have loved that. And it was like 5 strips or something within the same comic.
Yeah.
Brilliant, just like really inventive. One of the strips was Must Have a Million. Then there was Disaster's Des was part of this mystery comic.
Oh, was he? Because we saw him in Wizard and Chips.
It was Wizard and Chips as a guest coming over.
That's
from
right,
Cheeky
yeah.
Weekly.
But then they also do. I thought this was really interesting. The next page, This is another strip from the mystery comic, and it's Champ. So we looked at Champ in Wizard and Chips. I said this is a reprint, but what I thought was really, really, really interesting about this is that right at the top of the page, there's Cheeky, and Cheeky says, and now a not so old comic page from Wizard and Chips 1969.
Why has he done that? I didn't know that.
Because normally it's like, because as we'll say, there were other places in this where they just reprint stuff. And in these comics, I had a little look at this, and the theory is that in British comics, when you cash the cheque for your payment for doing a comic, there was some text on the back that says, by cashing this cheque, I give up all my rights in perpetuity. So they could reprint these strips without paying the artist anything. So that's why there's quite a lot that goes on. I mean, and then like in Buster, for instance, when Buster was coming to an end in the 80s, it was nearly all reprints, just to save money.
But so why is this on here?
Because I don't know. I mean, it just seems like such a really interesting thing to do, to actually say this is a reprint. I think in some of them, in some of the mystery comics, they would say, if it was a particularly old one, they say, oh, ask your dad if he's still got a copy of this in the loft. But it just seems like they're actually making a point of saying this is a reprint. This is what comics used to look like.
Maybe they'd had some sort of issue with the cartoonists in previous episodes.
Well, this is done by Leo Baxendale. So this is, and it looks very different from the version of the Champ we looked at a few weeks ago. And if they're going to have trouble with anybody, it will be Leo Baxendale, because Leo Baxendale did actually fight for creators' rights in this area where not a lot of it was done.
So maybe they had to, for some reason, make it clear that this was a reprinted page.
I don't know, because I think they do make reference to it in other times they do these strips. Or maybe it's because, I mean, if you look, it says Champ in really big letters, and Champ, the logo of Champ is quite similar to the logo of Cheeky. So maybe it was just that the actual page size was different, so they've had to put something in there to make up that extra bit of page at the top.
Weird though, isn't it?
It is weird, but I just thought it was really interesting that they're going, here's an old thing, and that's a point of interest rather than something to be ashamed of and hide.
Well, they did this amazing thing, another really creative thing in earlier editions of Cheeky Weekly, which was Cheeky would go up to his attic and just pull out his parents. There was a trunk of his parents' comics.
Oh, yeah, that's probably what I was thinking of.
And he would say, "Gosh, look at this! It's Film Fun from 1953 or whatever it was," and there would be a page of this old Film Fun comic. I used to find that completely fascinating as a kid. So we're back to Cheeky on Friday, and there's a really, I mean, it leads into is it the second colour page here? Calculator Kid. I mean, I thought this was a brilliant idea. I don't know what you thought.
It's a kid who's got a calculator.
It's a kid who's got a calculator, but the calculator calculates what's going to happen.
Oh, right, yeah.
So the calculator knows what's going to happen at the end of the day. It's brilliant. The kid doesn't know. I mean, this story is like, he's going, "Oh, I've got no money for the cinema." And the calculator says, "Pick some of your father's flowers." And then these bees start buzzing around him. He's getting really annoyed. He trips over. The flowers all end up in a vase in a flower show, and he wins first prize. And the prize is a load of money so he can go to the cinema. And the calculator says, "As arranged, now head for the cinema." The calculator knew all. I just thought that was such a great idea. You could see that running for years, unlike some of these ideas.
You can do. I mean, I suppose Terry Baby drew it, but maybe just never actually had a calculator and had no idea. Because I suppose if it was calculated, what's 3 plus 7? Allow me.
But for me personally, I thought it was a really good idea,
Okay.
having a calculator that can see the future or just calculate things. And we all had them. It was fairly early days for calculators.
You had a calculator that could see the future.
Well, you know, it would spell out certain words.
Boobs. It would do boobs upside 58008.
But anyway, I can tell you don't really like this strip.
I wasn't so keen on that one because I thought this one. I mean, this could have been a Whoopee or Whizzer and Chips.
It could have been, but I think it's a stronger idea than a lot of the other ones. But I did enjoy it. And then we come to Saturday, and this is a bit. I mean, another great idea in my mind is he stumbles on this empty phone box, a time travel phone box. And he has to dial whatever year's on the front, and it says dial 2001. So he does it, and he ends up in the year 2001. What a great idea! And it's there and gone.
Yeah, and then it's like, so he goes. There's a joke with some aliens,
and then it suddenly jarringly says, "Right, back to 1978." 2 panels later. That's the amount of fun and creativity there is in this thing. It's all crammed into it.
It is. It's amazing. And then this page ends with what I think. I really think this is probably the best of all the segues. And I really remember this one because they communicate in the cinema, and there's the cinema. What's he called?
Commissionaire. I know that word after getting it wrong last a few weeks ago.
It sounds like I'm testing. What's it called, John? What's he called?
It's the commissionaire.
The commissionaire. And the commissioner says, "The doors are open." And I always remember that. And every time I go to the cinema, I always think, "The doors are open." And all the kids run in, and see a cartoon.
So then, in the next few pages, we've got a Tweety and Sylvester cartoon called Flight School.
And I looked this one up, and because you look at it, because I think when we looked at TV comic, we weren't sure whether some of those were reprints of actual American things. This is a reprint of an American strip. So this is called Tweety and Sylvester in Flight School, and I think it first appeared in Tweety and Sylvester number 52 in Gold Key Comics in 1975.
Was it? Do you know if it was in colour or black and white? This is black and white.
It will have been in colour because all those comics are in colour, and it was. So this is 2 pages, but that was 4 pages. So this has been, and then when you look at it, you can see it's been chopped up quite a lot. So I mean, the end panel is a really, really weird, incredibly widescreen panel. The one panel at the end just stretches across the whole page because you sort of think, yeah, clearly they ran out of panels to fill the whole thing. So I think it looks like they've taken it, they've chopped it up and put it into different bits.
It looked weird to me. I mean, there's a lot of white in the background. You know, there's hardly any detail in the background in a lot of these panels.
And I guess that's because they've had to extend the panel sizes, or maybe because it's American comics and it's like, well, there'll be some colour there, so we don't necessarily
exactly.
need to.
It probably looks totally different with colour.
But it does look out of place. And I mean, the lettering style is different. I mean, it's interesting. Get ready. Get ready for this. Here we go.
Get ready for Mark's interesting spot.
This is called, and this is an example of transnational comics.
Okay.
For the purpose of the tape, John is looking beside himself with delight. And this is where you take a comic from another country and you present it in a different country. And there's always something needs to be done. So, for instance, taking American comics and printing them in English, you would have to change some of the spelling.
Oh.
And sometimes it goes a bit further than that, and they would change place names. Or in the early Marvel UK versions of Marvel stuff, they would do all that, and they would change dollars to pounds. Right. So Ben Grimm will be going, I gotta get myself 15 shillings. and that sort of thing will go on. And
That's mad, isn't it? I mean, it's not as if it looks like the Fantastic Four doesn't look like it's set in Cleethorpes.
But then it gets really interesting because, like Donald Duck comics, for instance, Donald Duck is massively popular all across Europe, hugely popular. And because there weren't enough Donald Duck comics American ones to be reprinted to fulfil the market need, German, Italian, and Dutch and Swedish companies started making their own Donald Duck comics, and then they would sell those Donald Duck comics to other countries across the world. And then in all of them, they'd be so. For instance, when Scrooge McDuck carries a bag full of money, it might have a dollar sign on it, or it might be a krona or a mark or a franc or something like that, and that may or may not change from country to country. Sometimes Donald Duck is apparently in the Dutch think that Donald Duck is Dutch, because he often interacts with Dutch settings, and so it's really interesting how this is. Yeah, it's really. I told you it was interesting.
Yeah.
But here, it's like the main thing we're seeing here is the artwork has been changed, chopped up, moved around, and as you say, put in great big white spaces to make it fill it up.
Yeah, it looks quite thin compared to the rest of it, and that must be why. I didn't think it was that brilliant, actually. No. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of the scripting here, but it was from another comic, so that's why the quality might be slightly different. But it's always interesting to see another style there.
It is, and it seems like it just feels like as it gets to the end of the comics, they get kind of a bit running out of energy, and also we've run out of money now because there's this intermission, isn't there? So there's another page, a cheeky page here, which is an intermission between the two, and then they go, "Oh, what are we going to watch now? We're going to watch a serial," and the serial is Archie's Angels, which on the one hand looks great, doesn't it? It's drawn by Ron Turner, looks fantastic, it's brilliant, but it's also a reprint from Wizard and Chips.
It looks old-fashioned. Well, do you know the date or anything?
It's only from 1972, so it's not that old-fashioned, but I think that's just what he looks like. That's just what his art is drawn like.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it looks like from another sort of time. I don't know. It's not. You like this? I didn't think it was that good. Why did you like it?
I just love the art. I think Ron Turner's such a great artist. He's so. It's the way if you look at it, there's a lot of times when he hasn't left the lines in. When he's drawn something, he's left a lot of the lines out, so it's just impressions and shading or makeup. And I just think it looks gorgeous.
Where is this meant to be set? Any idea? I was confused at that, whether it was England or Ireland or America or what the hell.
Well, there is a panther.
I had a feeling it might be meant to be set in America, but it's not obvious from this one episode, because at one point one of them says the critter won't get out of there in a hurry. And you're not going to say that if you're from Morecambe. I could take or leave this. I didn't really get who are the characters. I didn't really get to know them in this 2-pager. At all.
It's
anybody.
3 kids flying around in biplanes.
Yeah, so no real context to it. But then there was one other strip that we didn't look at in here, which is called $6 Million Gran. So Cheeky goes home, turns on the TV, and this is what he saw: $6 Million Gran. So this was a send-up of the $6 Million Man. It was probably the biggest programme on television in 1978. Do you remember it?
Oh, yeah. I had a $6 Million Man action figure.
Everybody did.
Where you look through the eye at the back and everything will look smaller.
Everything looked smaller, and they should have noticed that before they put it out. But, see, I had that. I had the enemy Maskatron, which was this weird robot that fired his head off at you. It was my favourite toy ever.
Amazing.
But it was huge. Every kid loved it. This was like pre-big superhero films, really, I suppose.
Well, there's quite a run, wasn't there? Because there's the Man from Atlantis, and there was a Gemini Man, and there's a few of those sort of things.
Gemini Man, you remember that?
I remember the Gemini Man.
You and me remember Gemini Man, that's it. Having said that, I'm trying to remember when Superman the movie came out. Anyway, that's
1978.
78, same year. But $6 Million Gran, again, to me, a really brilliant idea. This bionic granny. That's all you need to know about it.
Yes, she's a bionic granny. And
in this story, she goes into a top security airfield. So there are all these paratroopers sort of parachuting down. One of them, the parachute doesn't open, so she leaps into the airbase, throws this parachute up to thousands of miles in the air. As a reward, she gets to do a parachute jump herself. And then she ends up being towed along on the end of this spy plane. You can tell it's a spy plane because it's got spy in big letters on the side. And then she wrestles herself away from this spy plane, but she takes the front off with her. So the bloke, the spy, has to sort of jump out of the plane, and then he parachutes to the ground and gets arrested, and she gets rewarded for this. But anyone can understand what this character is. There's no explanation really required.
No.
It's just really fun, action-packed, spectacular. What a brilliant idea.
It's
Most kids have a granny, so they're going to find this hilarious even today, I would have thought.
And it's interesting because it's so action-packed, because it's like another strip that is doing the Bionic Man is the 12.5p Bionic Boy in Crazy Comic, isn't it?
Yeah.
And which is the same idea but just in a different angle. And that is also an action-packed. That when we looked at that, it's like, well, there's lots of action. It's almost an adventure story, and this is almost an adventure story. But there's so many brilliant bits. Like the guy, so you meet somebody at the airfield who's the air marshal, and I was looking at it going like, what's he got on his face? And then you lean in, it's like going, oh, so his handlebar moustache is actually a bicycle handlebar with a brake lever on it. And he said, they make no mention of it. And he said, God, that's such an amazing joke that you have to go, oh, it's a handlebar moustache.
This is Ian Knox.
This is Ian Knox. Well done, Ian Knox. Excellent work.
And he looks a bit like Terry Thomas as well, which
He
doesn't
does.
hurt.
It's fab. And then I love the fact that when the spy plane, they capture the spy, Ivan C. Kret, and he works for Spy Planes International. He says on the side of his plane. He's got a little plant in the background, and he says
He's got a plant.
He's got a plant
in his plane,
and he says, "Wow, the crazy Englander." And he's wearing a World War One German officer's hat. Is he in disguise as a World War One officer in there just to throw handlebar moustache guy off the plot? I don't know, but it's fab, isn't it? It's really, really good.
I think I might have called him Ivor Secret, but I suppose he's meant to be Russian.
Then he's a Welsh spy. What's going on there?
Well, I don't know who he is really. We ought to notify the author. But
we discovered the one slightly difficult aspect of this. It just doesn't make sense. So,
but I remember there being there was a big poster of $6 Million Gran in one of the issues, and I remember loving that. It just seems such a hilarious idea. You know, I was sat reading this at my Gran's.
Yeah.
And here was a Bionic Gran.
I wonder if Grans across the nation would look at this and go, "Oh, I'm like a $6 million Gran."
As we say, crammed full of jokes and silliness.
But then I was interested in the fact that at the end, so the final panel of $6 Million Gran goes back to Cheeky watching the telly, and he says, "What a gran story!" And I thought, does he say that pun every week?
Yeah, it's not a brilliant ending. But I don't know, he must have run out of time or something. You know, the editor was banging on his door. Give us the artwork now. But we're nitpicking.
Oh,
here.
that is
it's a brilliant story.
And it's just, I was thinking actually. I mean, I think the only time I can think of any British comic ever doing this, there was a story in 2000 AD. There were 3 separate stories in 2000, a few years ago now. 3 separate storylines. There was a Judge Dredd one, a Wally Squad one, and another one I can't remember which one it was. And they were all running separately. And then in one issue, suddenly at the end of the Judge Dredd story, he kicked down a door, and the next story was Judge Dredd coming through that door. And it all and it was like, and everyone went, "Whoa, what's going on?" And it was so shocking that these strips would all run into each other. But I'd never, apart from that, it's like this seems almost unique to Cheeky Weekly. It's so amazing and inventive.
I mean, even I like the characters that are just in it for one panel. They bothered to think of something else for one more panel. Like there's one character called Hid Kid, and all he does in this is, you can't see him, he's just hidden behind a chair somewhere in the cinema.
It does rhyme though, doesn't it? Hid Kid.
But the thing is, it's very inventive. Every panel packed with action and silliness and fun, and you get your money's worth, don't you? You get your blooming 8p's worth in here.
Certainly do.
Well, I noticed there was no in this issue. There was no chit chat with Cheeky. There was no letters page or anything. I think that came a little bit later, and you could win your sort of friend of Cheeky badge, which we all enjoyed. And there was also something later on which was called something like Laugh League or something, where it was like all the strips were 1 to 10. What's your favourite, and what are the ones you don't like? So maybe we could do that now. I mean, if I don't know. I mean, I loved all of it. I mean, it would be silly of me to say that there was anything I didn't really like, because it all fits together really well.
Yeah, I don't think there is. That's interesting, is it? Because it does all. It works. The conceit really works. It's such a fun thing. So I sort of think, well, my favourite bit, the Cheeky Sweet thing, is just. It's brilliant. And like you were saying, there's so much care gone into it. There are so many jokes. And they did not need to put all of these jokes into it just for 8p. It's incredible.
And he was a great character. It was Cheeky himself. He's just like a wisecracking, silly person who's full of daft jokes and funniness. You know, the class clown.
Yeah.
But there's nothing remotely malevolent about him.
No.
He's just a fun, relatable, silly wacky, daft kid.
And
that's what I wanted to be, really.
Yeah, I suppose we all did, didn't we? Because he was the funny one in the gang. Because Cheeky originated in the Crazy Gang in Crazy Comic, and then it's funny you think, well, why on earth for some reason somebody would have gone, oh, let's give him his own strip.
Well, he had something called Hello, It's Cheeky in Crazy, which was his own strip. He was going along around the streets and meeting a few characters here and there. That was only about 2 or 3 pages, and then this is that sort of thing writ large, but. Before we go, we ought to mention the Cheeky Weekly blog that we've
crumbs. Yeah, sorry, we haven't mentioned that yet.
And that is an amazing resource for anybody interested in Cheeky Weekly. It's so detailed.
It's fantastic, isn't it? Because when we do our preparation for this, yes, we do preparation for this, despite what it may sound like. It usually takes ages to try and work out who's drawn what, but the Cheeky Weekly blog, it's got it all. It tells you
every detail, anything you could ever want to know about it is there.
Yeah, so we'll put a link for that on the socials as well. Just to say, but thank you to them because this has made our life so much easier. It's fantastic. So what are we thinking then? So we're saying that 1 and 2. I think we're definitely putting Cheeky's Week as number 1, aren't we?
Cheeky's Week is number 1.
What's your second favourite?
$6 Million Gran.
$6 Million Gran was good, wasn't it? Yeah, I just liked that one bit in the corner where Cheeky says this is from 1969 because that just filled me with joy. And what didn't you like?
Yeah. The only thing I didn't really like, I didn't like Archie's Angels or whatever it was at the end. I mean, I thought it was going to be like Charlie's Angels, but it was very dissimilar.
Very few biplanes in Charlie's Angels. Yeah.
So I wasn't a big fan of that one, but I'm nitpicking. It's still a great read. There's still loads to enjoy in it.
I think it just stands there, doesn't it? It's such a unique thing in British comics to have this, and it's great to go back to it and appreciate it and realise how amazing it was in all these different ways. So yeah, I'm really shocked we looked at that.
I sent an email to Frank McDiarmid a couple of years ago just saying how much I'd enjoyed it as a kid, and he replied and he said something like, I guess it was all worthwhile then. He said something like that. Nice of him to bother to get back to me. I mean, when this folded, I think he became a fine artist or something. I'm not exactly sure what he did, but he remains for me my favourite cartoonist.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, all that remains then is to see what we're going to look at next time. So this time we looked at a buck-toothed loon who first appeared in a gang of kids who got his own comic. And so for a complete change of pace, next time we're going to look at a gap-toothed loon from a gang of kids who went and got his own comic, because we're going to look at Plug comic.
Oh, wow.
There we go.
Wow, look at this. Oh, I'm looking forward to this. Every Saturday. So you've got Plug on Saturday and Cheeky on Monday or something.
That's right.
Going.
So that's us. That was Funny Comics Fan Club. Please do, if you want to get in touch with us, please send us an email at dredgehibbit@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening, and don't forget... I shouldn't have said that. Don't forget you can read about it on the socials, and that's about it from me and from us. Fare thee well.
Get it.